Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, wherever you're at. My name is Nate Hare. We're going to get started here in just a minute. I'm just going to give a couple seconds for people to log on. I appreciate you guys spending a little time with us today. We're covering my favorite topic, which is investing. That's actually what I do in my self-directed IRA. So I have some experience in talking about it. And I just like talking about how you can use self-directed IRAs to not only create, but own and buy and be creative with your note investing. And I think you guys will get a lot of use out of this presentation. So as a reminder, if you guys have questions, type them into the chat box. I've got one of our IRA specialists and sales associates, Matthew Duffy, on as a backup. He can answer any questions as it relates to self-directed IRAs, if you want to get them set up, if you want to have questions specifically to that. If it's specific to note investing, I can try to take those questions toward the end. Or as we go, just depends. And if you guys think of stuff even afterwards, I've got my contact information at the end of this presentation. You guys are always feel free to contact me, set up a call with me, and just talk a little bit more about, how self-directed IRAs can be used, not only for note investing, but for all types of alternative investing. So thank you guys for joining us today. Give a couple more minutes. I know people are still logging in. Let's just do a fun little game here. Give me a 1 if this is your first workshop you guys are attending here at Directed IRA. Give me a 1 if it's your first time. Give me a 2 if it's your second time or third time or repeat time. Just trying to get a gauge for how many people we have coming on who are repeats and how many people that we have coming on that are new. So, Francisco, thank you for coming on. First time. Thank you. A lot of ones. Oh, let me get the chat enabled here. Thank you guys for letting me know that. Let's see. It looks like the chat's enabled. I can see all of you guys' chats. 111. Very good. A lot of newbies. I love it. All right. So I'm not sure if the chat's working or not, but it shows. You guys can always type in the Q&A. So Q&A and chat work just the same way. So I appreciate you guys joining in. Got some 2s there. Hi, Ed. Hi, Angela. Jeanette. Thank you guys for joining in. I think it's about time. We'll go ahead and get started here. So let me pull up my PowerPoint and we'll get underway. All right. So let's jump right into it. So hopefully you guys can see my screen there, but we're going to talk about private lending. And we've done a couple workshops over the last couple weeks that have talked about buying and owning notes from a little bit different perspective. We've had some great guest speakers, Josh Andrews, Kevin Shortell, who are active note investors. They are going out and finding either performing or non-performing notes from people that are just selling off some of their note assets, and how that works well in a self-directed retirement account or as an alternative asset in your retirement account. I'm going to be talking about notes a little bit differently. We're going to talk about creating notes. And what I mean by creation of a note is basically when you have a self-directed IRA, you can use that account as a lending vehicle. Now, lending vehicles come in all different sizes and shapes, but lending specifically, what we're going to talk about today is lending on real estate deals, lending to other investors who might be securing that money by a property that they're buying or renting or fixing and flipping, and they're paying your IRA interest payments or principal payments that's allowing your IRA to grow. In that case, we're not buying an existing note, but we're actually negotiating terms with a potential borrower, and we're creating the note from scratch. This is actually the more common way to own notes in a self-directed IRA that I've found is by just finding people that have good investments or good deals in your neighborhood or otherwise, and using your IRA as the lending vehicle for that. So we're going to talk about a couple of different things. First, for the new people, we're going to talk about what is a self-directed IRA and why does it allow you to do this type of investment where your Fidelity IRA only allows you to buy stocks and bonds. We're going to talk a little bit about IRA rules, self-directed IRA rules specifically, because there are certain people your IRA cannot loan to. Okay, there's a lot of people your IRA can loan to. There's a small group of people your IRA cannot loan to. Those aren't directed IRA rules. Those aren't Fidelity IRA rules. Those are IRS rules set, by the man above. So we're going to talk about who your IRA can and cannot lend to. And we'll talk a little bit about the process. Once you figure out who your IRA can lend to and you have potential borrowers who have good deals that might pay your IRA interest payments, we're going to talk about how the process works. And then I have some case studies after we go over some considerations that you might want to make before you lend somebody your hard-earned retirement money. And these are just considerations that I've come to know and understand through my note investing, both outside and inside my IRA, and we'll take some questions outside of that. So hopefully this is beneficial to you guys. Just a quick background about myself. I am a certified IRA services professional. What does that mean? It's just a nerdy term saying I passed an exam and I know a little bit about IRAs in general, not just self-directed IRAs. But my background really is actually real estate and lending. Out of college, I went right into real estate as a loan consultant in the mortgage business. I got my start there. I've owned a lot of my own rental properties. And over my career, I find that I like dealing with just the money aspect of real estate. I don't like dealing with the toilets. I don't like dealing with the tenants, the pissed off, people. I like dealing with the bank side of real estate. And that's where I've come to, find that my self-directed IRA investments are actually mirroring what I know and love and understand, which is note investing and lending. So I have a lot of experience in real estate, but more recently I've had, the opportunity to grow in this self-directed IRA career for the last 11 years. So I've seen tens of thousands of investments in self-directed IRAs and can kind of speak from that as well as my own experience as an investor. Even though I am an investor, and you'll find that a lot of the principals here at Directed IRA are investors, as a self-directed IRA custodian, we're not allowed to give you guys tax, legal, or investment advice. So when we do a workshop or we do a webinar or we do a podcast, these are just for education purposes only. What these workshops are intended to help you with is to help bridge the gap between an idle retirement account and finding an alternative investment without selling you in the investment, because we don't have investments to sell you here at Directed IRA. What we provide you at Directed IRA is the opportunity to use your retirement account to buy things off of Wall Street, to buy things on Main Street, to buy things like real estate, private equity, private stock, cryptocurrency, notes, which we'll talk about today. But we don't have those investments to sell you. When you have a self-directed IRA, you have to tell us what you want to invest in. So we'll talk a little bit about how you bridge that gap and how you actually find people to lend money to and what you want to look for and how you want to network. But as far as Directed IRA goes, we don't have the investments or the people that are looking to borrow your money. We don't hand that to you, but we do hand you over the keys to take control of your own retirement. We just act as the vehicle to allow you to do those investments in your retirement account. So for the new people, let's just cover real quick basics. Okay. What can my IRA or 401k own? Okay. Most people don't realize that your IRA can own almost anything. As a general rule of thumb, your retirement account, whether it's an IRA or a 401k or an old 403b, by rule, it can own anything except two assets: life insurance contracts and collectibles. Anything else your IRA can own. The only difference is when you have an IRA at Fidelity or Charles Schwab, they're only going to allow you to hold the investments that they sell. Doesn't make them bad guys. That's just the nature of their business. Okay. Those guys are licensed securities brokers and they sell traditional investments, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, CDs, REITs. This is the nature of their business. So never will your Fidelity guy tell you you have the opportunity to buy real estate, commercial property, multifamily, private equity, private stocks, syndications, or lend out of a retirement account because they don't facilitate that investment because they just don't make money on it. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you have to find a company like Directed IRA that's truly self-directed that says, we'll allow you to invest in anything that the IRS allows, but you got to pick the investment. So the best thing about a self-directed IRA is you get to pick the investment. The worst thing about a self-directed IRA is you have to pick the investment. So it's not fit for everybody, but a self-directed IRA really makes a big difference when you're an entrepreneurial type of investor. You have either access to deals or you have the access to deals through somebody else, like a real estate investor. Okay. And you have some sort of knowledge base outside of the stock market that bodes well to growing your retirement account basically on your terms. So where do I see self-directed IRAs really take off? Somebody that's a real estate investor, somebody that's a real estate broker, somebody that's in the mortgage business, people that understand real estate. Real estate investors, small business owners, people that have investment opportunities, maybe even small startup companies could be an investment opportunity inside of a retirement account. But don't think that you're going to set up a self-directed IRA and then just voila, your retirement assets just grow, because you have to do a little bit of work in finding the investment, and we'll provide the services to make that investment happen in your IRA so that you keep all your tax benefits. Most of our clients at Directed IRA who have a self-directed IRA to hold alternative assets also have an account at a Fidelity or Charles Schwab. That's actually wise, I think, because if you want to hold different types of assets in different types of asset classes and really diversify your overall retirement portfolio, you should have an IRA at multiple custodians that hold different assets. More and more people, I think, are realizing this today, because even in the last year, 2022, we saw the largest increase of investors moving to alternative assets than we ever have. I think the biggest reason for that is that more and more investors realize that they have access to investments they didn't realize they have, because information technology has increased. We can find investments, whether it's through crowdfunding, whether it's just through meeting people through Facebook groups or investor groups. You have opportunities to find investments easier than you ever did in the past. And truthfully, people have been investing in alternative assets for decades. Usually it was the rich and wealthy. The rich and wealthy have been using self-directed IRAs to invest in alternative assets for a long, long time, because they were in the know and they knew that these self-directed IRAs existed, but they had access to the investments at the same time. So more and more people are realizing that you can use self-directed IRAs to own alternative assets. And it doesn't mean you have to be a savvy investor or a real estate investor to do this, because I have a lot of clients that actually own notes and real estate in their retirement account, and they are not real estate investors. Why do they do that? Well, there's a lot of benefits that come with owning alternative assets, specifically notes, which we'll talk about, that you don't get in the stock market. So what are some of the benefits to owning notes? And by note, let me just define it real quick. When we're talking about a note, we're talking about a promissory note. All a promissory note is, it's a promise to pay. Okay. When you borrow money from a bank to buy a house, there's a promissory note that you sign. It's either a note or a mortgage. Okay. That's an agreement between you as the borrower in most cases and the bank that says, I'm going to pay on this loan at this interest rate for this many years or this many months, and then that property is mine. So a promissory note is just a promise to pay. Promise to pay can be drafted professionally. I've seen promises to pay on napkins. Okay? It's just an agreement between a lender and a borrower that says, I promise to pay you this based on this terms. That's all a note is. Okay. But what's the benefit to owning notes in a self-directed IRA? And we'll talk about the difference between a secured and an unsecured note. I like to invest in secured notes. Most people like to invest in secured notes. Banks invest in secured notes in most cases. Okay. But what's the difference between owning a note and owning real estate? Well, owning a note is passive. When I lend money to a real estate investor out of my IRA, I don't own the property. I just own the note, just like a bank. I'm the bank, or my IRA is the bank, I should say. Who deals with the toilets and the tenants and the ownership headaches? The owner of the property, the borrower. Okay. So I don't have to deal with toilets, tenants, or ownership headache. I am passive as the lender, and I just collect interest payments made by the borrower. Okay. Now, even though it's passive, I still have a level of responsibility to make sure that my borrowers are paying. Either I have to do it or I get a servicing company to make sure payments are made. If payments are not made, I may have to step in and send a notice of default. We're going to talk a little bit about these things, but as a general rule of thumb, a note is a passive investment. Okay, it could be a great passive investment, but it's passive. Notes also allow you to better diversify your overall retirement portfolio. Now, this goes, again, like I said, outside of being a real estate investor. If you want real diversification is not high risk mutual funds, some medium risk mutual funds, and some low risk mutual funds. That's just a bunch of mutual funds. And mutual funds are just a bunch of stocks. Okay, so I would argue that that is having your eggs in one basket. If you don't want your eggs in one basket, you want to look outside of the stock market and look to things that are in the alternative space. Now, one of the things I like about the alternative space is that a lot of the assets that we hold here at Directed IRA and that I invest in are tangible. Okay, it's like this desk. It's an investment you can drive by, touch, and feel. We have a lot of clients. I use real estate, for example. If you own a piece of real estate in your retirement account, that's not going to disappear. Okay, it's a hard asset. The house could burn to the ground, but you have land underneath that house. And where's land going? They're not building any more of it, and it's always going to be there. But also, there's benefits to holding tangible assets, because if your house burns down, owned in your IRA or otherwise, you have insurance that'll cover losses on that because it's a tangible asset. If I'm a note investor, I still have the same benefits because my note is secured by a property that has insurance on it. So you can see that at the end of the day, even if I own a note, it's a piece of paper like a stock is, but that piece of paper that I have has collateral. Stock has no collateral. So it's good for diversification, but it's also good to hold some sort of tangible assets in your portfolio so that you can't lose everything, with one bad day or one bad year in the stock market. There's other tangible assets that people like to hold: gold, silver, precious metals, those types of things. I like real estate. I like loans. But again, just for conceptual purposes, you can own all sorts of things. But owning tangible assets gives you some better diversification, I think, than just owning a bunch of stocks. Tax savings is one key component to a retirement account, and it really kicks in when you can use it in a fashion where you're owning notes. Okay, IRAs, 401ks, and your other qualified retirement plans are all tax-exempt trusts by definition. You, as the fiduciary, you put money into the trust. You're supposed to find investments and help it grow. But everything in that trust, in that retirement account, grows owned by the retirement account. You don't own anything until you take a distribution. Now, that's a good thing, because the trade-off is the government says, we'll allow you to put money in this retirement account and we'll allow you to invest it, provided you don't take any money out till retirement. And all of the profit will grow either tax-exempt or tax-free, meaning I can buy and sell assets in my retirement account and make more money because I don't have to pay taxes annually like I do as a tax-paying individual with my money. So if you're looking to grow a bucket of money faster, it's going to grow much faster in a retirement account that's tax exempt versus in your bank account, because you're a taxpayer. We'll also talk a little bit about how you can exponentially grow that and take advantage of that tax exempt status by doing shorter term notes and compounding your interest. So when you just think of those concepts alone, compounding interest in a tax-free environment, well, now you're really talking about a pretty healthy retirement if you're doing it safely and securely. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but tax savings is always going to be a key component to any IRA investment. The thing I like about notes specifically is that notes are predictable. When I create a note owned by my retirement account, I'm part of the process from beginning to end, meaning I pick the borrower, I pick the property. Okay. I make all the decisions. I'm the underwriter. Someone asked me that the underwriter, who underwrites your deals? I do. I make the decision as to whether my IRA is going to loan to this individual or that individual on that property or this property. But based on that control aspect, I also am a part of negotiating the terms. If my IRA is not going to negotiate its own terms, I have to do that as the fiduciary. But when I negotiate the terms, I know when payments are supposed to be made. Okay, I know when interest payments are supposed to be made. I know when the loan is supposed to pay off, when the maturity date is. I know everything about that note, so I can gauge when my IRA should grow and when it shouldn't grow. It's a lot. That's a big difference between turning on CNBC and hoping that my stock went up or down, because I don't have control over that. But I have control over the note interest income my notes make, because I negotiated the terms. And we'll talk about like when the borrower doesn't pay, what happens in that case. But in most cases, if you loan to the right people on the right deals, you know exactly what you're supposed to get on a monthly or a bi-month, however you structure the deal. You know exactly when your account is supposed to grow, which is a comfortable feeling, I would say, in most people's lives. So what type of retirement accounts can you use to own notes or other alternative assets? We'll just go over this real quick, and then we'll go over, things not to do, and then I'll go over some case studies and take questions. So there's 7 types of accounts that you can use to own alternative assets. Okay, these are just the accounts that we have here at Directed IRA, and you'll notice that a lot of them are the same IRAs that you would open at your Fidelities or Charles Schwab. Okay, it's no different. Self-directed is just a marketing term. Okay, there's no real legal meaning behind self-directed. Okay, IRAs are IRAs are IRAs. So if you've got a rollover IRA at Fidelity, that's just an IRA. If you have a self-directed IRA and directed IRA, that's just an IRA. If you have a real estate IRA, it's just an IRA. Okay, so IRAs can invest in all types of things, and these are the 7 types of accounts that you can set up here at Directed that can be invested into notes. Okay, traditional IRAs, Roth IRAs, those would be your personal plans. Anybody that has earned income can make contributions to a personal plan. Doesn't even matter if you're 4 years old. We have clients here that have Roth IRAs here who are below majority age, and they're below 18. Their family put them on payroll. They're putting money into a Roth IRA, and what those Roth IRAs are invested in could be all sorts of alternative assets. But your personal plans can be used to self-direct and own notes. Employer plans are another option. If you're self-employed or you've got a side business, you can be a W-2 wage earner. You can also have some side income. But any side income, any self-employment income allows you to have a SEP IRA, simple IRA, or the mighty solo 401k, which a lot of our small business owners have and use to self-direct. Then you can also, and I don't want people to forget about this, you can self-direct accounts that are non-retirement accounts. You could self-direct health savings accounts. I got a lot of questions last week after a presentation about health savings account. They had no idea you could self-direct it. They didn't even know you can invest a health savings account. Yes, you can self-direct a health savings account. In fact, when I do a loan out of my self-directed accounts, it's usually partnered with my Roth IRA and my health savings account. I'll save that for the case study, but there's a reason why I use both of those accounts on the same loan, because they fit different purposes in life. HSA profit I can use immediately to pay for out-of-pocket health expenses. Okay, my Roth IRA, I have to wait to use that money until 59 and a half to really take advantage of the tax advantages a Roth IRA gives me. But if I want to use some tax-free income today, and I have health expenses like doctor's visits, acupuncture, eyeglasses, holistic medicines, prescriptions, if I want to start paying for some of those needs today with tax-free dollars, I need to understand how I can self-direct a health savings account. And then on the flip side, if I have children or grandchildren, and I want to use some of my investments to help pay for education for them in a tax-free manner, and education meaning tuition, any tuition between kindergarten all the way through college, even trade schools count, books, room and board, computers, iPads, tutoring. There's a whole list of education expenses that can also be paid out of what's called a Coverdell Education Savings Account. Again, these are not retirement accounts, but these are accounts that can be self-directed, but the profit that comes back to these accounts can be used today to pay for today's expenses. And you really maximize this, especially with note investing, when you start identifying the different uses of buckets of money that I can use when I self-direct. It's not just my retirement accounts, it's my health expenses and my education expenses for my kids or grandkids that I can help pay for using my knowledge as an investor and my knowledge of self-directed IRAs. So just in this example, you could say have a traditional IRA, a Roth IRA for maybe you and your spouse. You can have a health savings account, a Coverdell education savings account. You can even have a solo 401k. And all of those accounts can partner together on one promissory note. I've seen, I think the most IRAs or self-directed accounts I've seen on one promissory note is 14. I said 14 IRAs, and it was all family. It was like a brother's IRA, it was an aunt's IRA, it was two sons that they had on payroll or had summer jobs. 14 different IRAs on one promissory note. Yeah, it's a longer promissory note, but it's still one note. And the borrower on that note still just makes one payment to the IRA custodian. All the IRA custodian does is just split the profit of that, split each check pro rata and put it in different buckets based on how much each bucket put in on the original deal. So you've got some of the income that's going to feed your retirement that you want to leave in there and reinvest, for later. But you've got some income, if you're using it right, to pay for your education expenses and health expenses that can be used today or tomorrow, wherever you want to use it. So using this strategy, partnering is key to getting the maximum benefit out of self-direction. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we talk about the case studies. So before we talk about some considerations, let's talk about the things you're not allowed to do with an IRA. And this is not just what you're not allowed to do with a self-directed IRA. This is not what you're not allowed to do with any IRA. The IRS is real sticklers about not what the IRA invests in, but who it invests with. Okay? You, as the IRA owner or the HSA owner or the ESA owner, whether the parent, okay, you're the fiduciary of your IRA. Meaning you have a fiduciary responsibility to help that account grow. Okay? You cannot cross the line as a fiduciary and take advantage of that IRA. I'll give you another example of being a fiduciary. If you have a sick relative, let's say you have a sick aunt, okay, she's bedridden, she needs somebody to be their fiduciary and basically make sure that their life can continue with their paying their bills, paying their mortgage, paying their car payment, because they can't do it on their own. Okay? So you might be instructed as their fiduciary, which means you have to make sure that all their bills are paid as the fiduciary. But that means you can't take advantage of that person by making sure your bills are paid with their money. That would be a conflict of interest. You're clouding your fiduciary responsibility and you're taking advantage of your sick aunt. Think about your IRA in the same regard. Your IRA cannot make decisions for itself. You are the decision maker when it comes to your IRA. But being the fiduciary means that you are a disqualified person to your IRA. Disqualified persons even go outside of yourself, but disqualified persons are not allowed to transact with their own IRA. And specifically, when we talk about notes, what that means is your IRA cannot make a loan to you or your LLC. Okay, you're a disqualified person to your IRA. It is illegal for you to say, I want my IRA to make a loan to me. How do you take money out of your IRA to benefit yourself? Distributions. That's how you take money out of your IRA, but you can't instruct your IRA to make a loan back to yourself. That's where the IRS says, nope, that's not how we want an IRA to be used. Okay, you can use your IRA to invest or make loans to non-disqualified people. Okay? Non-disqualified people are anybody outside of this list. Okay, here are the disqualified people as it's based on the IRS rules. Okay, a disqualified person, if I'm talking about my account, would be myself, my spouse, my lineal ascendants, which are parents, grandparents, all the way up, lineal descendants, which are kids and grandkids all the way down, and their spouses, and any companies those same people own, control, or manage. So it's a specific list of family: me, spouse, parents, grandparents, kids, grandkids, their spouses, and any entities that they own or control. Okay? Why do they disqualify those people, but they don't disqualify brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, nephews? Because when you die, normally your wealth is passed to your spouse or your kids. Okay. It's passed lineal. It's either passed to the spouse or passed to the kids and grandkids and all the way down. Normally, you're not seeing people pass massive amounts of wealth to their cousins and their brothers and their sisters and their aunts and uncles. Okay. So in the IRA world, those people to the side or family to the side are not considered disqualified. Now, that doesn't mean that you should be making loans to your brother or your sister. That's a whole nother conversation. But if my brother was a real estate investor, it's not against the rules for my IRA to make a loan to my brother. Okay. It is against the rules for my IRA to make a loan to my son. Okay. Or myself. Okay. So just understand who your IRA can do business with and who it can't do business with. And remember, your benefit comes from the distributions you take from the plan. So how you want to think about your IRA is to grow wealth, and you can grow massive amounts of wealth because of the tax benefits, but just play within the rules, okay? Find local investors that you know and trust. If you want to be a private lender, find local investors you know and trust that will pay your IRA interest payments based on their skill level and their skill, basically their work. Okay. Don't think about your IRAs. How can I just take money out of myself to fund my own deals? If you're a real estate investor, here's how you really want to think about it. My IRA should be funding other people's deals. Other people's IRAs should be funding my deals. That's how a real estate investor should be thinking. If you're just thinking about how to fund it with your own money, you're spinning your wheels. I would say that's a small way of thinking anyways. If you're a part of a local RIA, here's where local RIA members really take this and run with it. Let's say that I'm a part of a local RIA. I'm also a real estate investor. I've got 3 other people that are also, have retirement accounts that are also part of the RIA. None of us are related to each other. There's nothing wrong with me being the lender with my retirement account to Susie, and Susie's got a great 3-bedroom, 2-bath house she needs to flip. Okay, my IRA can be her lender. Susie might have a self-directed IRA and she lends to Bob. Okay. Bob might have a self-directed IRA. He lends to Frank, and Frank might have a self-directed IRA and he lends to me. Okay. It doesn't have to be that specific, but in that regards, that's the best way to use self-directed IRAs, where everybody has the opportunity to buy property with someone else's money and grow their retirement at the same time. And really what you just did is you created your own private bank by understanding that concept. So think about other people's IRAs to fund your personal deals if you're a real estate investor or an investment sponsor, but your IRA has to fund other people who are not disqualified to your IRA. If you got questions about that, schedule a call with me, send me an email. I'm more than happy to discuss that a little bit further. So let's dive into the lending here. So the first thing I get questions on is, well, what about foreclosure, Nate? What happens if I loan to somebody and the property forecloses? Well, I would say, how much money did you make? So if you understand foreclosure is not a scary thing as a lender. Nobody wants to have to foreclose on somebody. But if you're doing your due diligence and you're securing your money by your properties when you lend, especially if you're lending on real estate, which I'll talk a lot about, foreclosure is not the worst case scenario. Sometimes it's the best case scenario. Sometimes you need to foreclose. And for what foreclosure is just the process in which you as the lender take title to the property in the event your borrower stops paying. Most of the borrowers that I see stop paying on notes that come through directed IRA or any of the companies I worked at, most of the borrowers that stop paying are not because they were bad people. Most of the people that stop paying on an IRA-owned note, it's because that borrower died or the borrower got sick. There was just something that happened. Life happened to that borrower where they were unable to make payments going forward. That's not a bad thing. That's just life. So as a lender, what you want to make sure of is that you just understand the foreclosure laws specific to the property that state resides in. Every state has different foreclosure processes, and every state's going to work a little bit differently when it comes to foreclosure rules. Okay? The first thing you want to ask yourself before you make a loan on a property is you want to understand, is my property in a judicial foreclosure state or a non-judicial state? Really easy. Judicial foreclosure states means you just have to go through the courts. When you have to go through the courts, it takes a little bit longer. Everybody knows that. Non-judicial states, you could take title to your property very quickly. Okay, think place like Arizona, Texas, or non-judicial states. Non-judicial states usually work off a document called deed of trust. Okay, a deed of trust is a document when you're the lender that allows you to circumvent the court systems in the event your borrower stops making payments. So I'll just break that down in layman's terms. Okay, when I close and I make a loan to a real estate investor, we close at a title company. Okay, my note is secured by the deed of trust. Okay, the deed of trust, the deed is not ownership. That's the warranty deed. The deed of trust is the document that says, in the event of default, I can start the foreclosure process as the lender. Now, what most states have you do it's a process. You start the foreclosure process by just sending a notice of default to your borrower when they first miss a payment. Hey, I noticed you missed a payment. Okay, we give you X amount of days to cure that payment. These are the things that you want to do or have a servicer do in the event a borrower doesn't make a payment on an IRA loan. Okay, if they don't answer that first request, then you can send an acceleration of that notice. If they don't answer that request, you can begin the actual foreclosure process. Most of the loans that I've done, I will just tell you, are in the state of Texas. Okay, why do I like to loan in Texas? Well, because the foreclosure laws on investment property, which is the only property that I loan on, I never loan on somebody's house that they're living in. That's a whole different animal that I could talk about. I only loan to real estate investors who are buying rental property or fix and flips, investment property. In the state of Texas, I'll just give you an example. If my borrower misses a payment and I have to foreclose, I can have title to that property in as little as 90 days. Okay. Is that important to me as a lender? Yes. There's some states that take years to get your property back. If I'm a lender, do I want to take years, even though going through a court system and going through a process of trying to get my asset back? No, because I'm going to get hit with tons of holding costs that I don't want to have to pay. I'm going to have to pay property taxes. I'm going to have to pay all sorts of things waiting for me to get title to this property, whether it's in my IRA or not. So understanding the foreclosure laws is just something that you want to do for yourself as a lender. Okay. Understanding if it's a mortgage state or a deed of trust state. Understanding how long the foreclosure process takes and what will my holding costs be if worst case scenario happens. And does the borrower have redemption rights in the event of default? Most investment properties, you're not going to have redemption rights. But again, I would highly urge you guys stay away from owner-occupied property, because not only do you deal with a lot of things you shouldn't have to deal with, but you deal with Dodd-Frank laws and a lot of things that we won't talk about today. But lending on investment property, you're going to run into a lot less headaches than you will loaning on owner-occupied property. But the first thing you want to ask yourself is, what are the foreclosure laws in the state that I'm either lending on or where that property is located on? Okay, there's some states that are tough. There's some states that are easy. Okay, what are some other considerations you want to make as a lender? Well, the first thing you want to ask yourself before you lend anybody money is, would you be excited to own that asset? Okay, worst case scenario, if my borrower doesn't pay, would I be excited to own that even if I have to foreclose? Most people know what to do with a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. Okay, so I'm not afraid of making a loan on a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in a state that I understand the foreclosure laws. I'm not going to loan on commercial property though. Why? I'm just not familiar with managing commercial property, nor do I want the headache of managing commercial property. So if somebody brings me the best deal on earth, but it's commercial property, I'm going to pass, because I would rather not have that stress of owning commercial property in the event the borrower doesn't pay me. So make sure whatever you loan on, be excited to own that in the event your borrower has to default. If you're new to this, hire professionals to help you evaluate your deals. Even to this day, if I get a deal, I'm going to pass it along to somebody I know that's familiar with the area to run their own comps, and I'm going to match it up with my comps. I'm going to have professionals evaluate my deals as I evaluate them myself. So having access to MLS will help you. So, it might not be hiring professionals, but just use professionals. If you know a local real estate agent or a real estate investor who can help you kind of evaluate your deals, don't be afraid to reach out to them. That's part of your network. One of the things with self-directed IRAs is using a network. Even as a lender, you can have a network that will help you so that you don't get yourself into some bad deals. The one thing that I love about private lending with notes, specifically in self-directed IRAs, is I get to create the terms. And we'll talk a little bit about in the case studies, different terms that you can make to make win-win scenarios, but you get to create the terms. Now, the terms include everything from how much the loan amount is going to be, whether or not there's going to be an escrow holdback for repairs, what the interest rate's going to be, when the payments are going to be made. Are they going to be monthly payments? Or are they going to be annual payments? Are there going to be just payments when the loan matures 5 years from now? That's up to you and the borrower to decide. What I would caution you on, though, because I've seen this happen, is clients might make a loan for, say, 2 to 5 years. Just give an example. But they say all the interest and principal is due at the maturity date of the loan, which is basically when the loan is due, when the principal balance of the loan is due. So what happens then if you have a 5-year note with no payments asking to be made monthly, and you can't get a hold of the borrower? All of a sudden, the borrower disappears. Can you get your asset back? Can you get your money back? Well, not if they're not missing payments. So a lot of times, instructing there to be payments made is not a way of just making sure your IRA grows. It's a way to make sure that that the borrower is on track, that the borrower is performing on the note. If you're not asking for payments to be made, it's really hard to say that note's performing or non-performing. You can get creative with this too. I've done loans where somebody had to do a pretty hefty rehab. Okay, the rehab was going to take 3 to 6 months, probably 6 months is what it ended up taking. I know that as a borrower, they're not making any money until they sell the house. Okay. But if it's a really good deal and I really trust the borrower, then I can probably put in the note that I'll make the first 3 months no interest, or the first 6 months no interest. Why would I do that? I want to make sure my borrower performs. I want to make sure I'm putting my borrower in a position where they can do what they need to do so that I make sure that I make my money and my interest back too. But I'm not going to go further than that with making no interest payments, because I need a way to start gauging whether or not that loan is performing or not. So just make sure that you're collecting monthly interest at some point so that you can gauge whether or not that note is performing or not. If the loan goes into default, take action immediately. Don't delay. Taking action on a loan that goes into default is not just foreclosing and taking the property. Foreclosure, as I kind of mentioned earlier, it's a process. Okay. The first step in the process is just sending a notice of default. You'd be shocked how many borrowers make a payment the next day as soon as they get that letter saying, I notice you missed a payment. Okay. That's taking action. Okay. So if a borrower misses a payment, either you have to send that notice of default, or you have to have an attorney. In most cases, just have an attorney draft a letter. They usually charge like $100. They draft a letter, they mail it, and they basically say to the borrower, we notice you missed a payment. You have X amount of days to rectify that, or else we'll begin the foreclosure process. Almost like clockwork, you'll see the payment come in the next day or within the next 3 business days. Okay. But if you don't send that notice of default, if you don't take that responsibility or action as the lender, what might the borrower do? Well, I guess they didn't notice, so I'm just going to go ahead and continue doing what I'm going to do. So make sure that you take action immediately and think like a bank. When Bank of America, you miss a payment with them, they don't hesitate. You get an email the next day if you missed a payment on the due date. So take action immediately. Don't delay if your borrower misses a payment. Be careful on how much your IRA funds for large rehabs. Okay. You could get creative with how much money you give to a potential borrower too. And what I mean by that is you have control over how much money you dish out to a potential real estate investor. And most real estate investors might need some money to rehab property. If you've got a $70,000 loan, okay, for the borrower to buy the property, and let's just say, making it round numbers, let's say he needs $30,000 to rehab it. Okay, 70 to buy it, 30 to rehab it, and the ARV's 185. Okay, just making a number up. Okay. If I, as the lender, give him all 70 to buy it and then all 30 to rehab it before any rehab's been done, and then they die the next day, I take over the property, how much money am I out? I'm out 100 grand. I gave 100 grand. I can't get the 100 grand back. Okay, the borrower died. Okay, what still needs to be done for me to sell the property? Well, I got to do the rehab. So I got to put in another 30 grand. So now I'm not in for just 100, I'm in for 130 grand. After holding costs, after realtor fees, I might be breaking even trying to get that property sold and trying to get my money back. Okay. So make sure that you are responsible with how much money your borrower gets. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. You can have us as the IRA custodian hold back money. You can say, hey, I want $70,000 to go out, but I want the first $10,000 to go out 2 weeks from now. Okay. Or you say to the borrower, I want to see evidence of the first set of repairs. Get them to get some skin in the game. Do some repairs. Show me the repairs. Let me see it, and then I'll front you some money to pay for those expenses. Okay? You can do that in however many increments you want. You can even throw money in an escrow account and dictate how much money out of that escrow account goes to your borrower. But be responsible with how much money goes out, and sometimes get involved by just asking the borrower to show you evidence that the repairs have been made and they're made to your liking. Okay, so that I'll just say that on that. This is all just thinking like a bank. Okay, if you're going to be a lender using your IRA funds, get title insurance on your loan. Always close with the title company or through an attorney's office. You want to make sure that you've got clear title to the property that your IRA money is secured by. Make sure your IRA is listed as the lender on any insurance policy. So this is this is just a step that any bank does. But if you've got homeowners insurance, you want to make sure that that homeowners insurance lists your IRA as the lender. Okay, your IRA as the mortgagee. If there's flood insurance, same thing. You want to make sure that if some catastrophe happens to that house, that everybody knows you've got a lender involved there and that money was used from you to buy the house. So you need to get a check reimbursing yourself if the house burns down or the house gets into a major flood. Always check that property taxes are paid in current if you're the lender. This is really easy nowadays. All you want to do is go to the county assessor's page and make sure that property taxes are being paid. Or again, you go to your borrower and ask your borrower to show you evidence that the property taxes are paid. This is the one situation if you're not paying attention to it, but your borrower is making payments, you can still lose the property because the county assessor might take the property because nobody's paying attention to the property taxes. So make sure property taxes are paid or make sure there's some agreement that they're going to get paid between you and the borrower. If you're loaning to an entity, ask for a personal guarantee. Entities give you a little less security because again, somebody can just dissolve an entity and then who are you going to go after? So if I'm ever loaning to somebody's LLC and the LLC is going to own a property, I'm also going to ask them to give me a personal guarantee on the side. A lot of borrowers are comfortable doing this, especially if they've got a scalable business that they've done a lot of deals on. They're not afraid to throw a personal guarantee on there. And don't loan to anyone you will feel uncomfortable foreclosing on. This goes to that family to the side. Loaning to a brother or sister, even though it's within the rules, are you going to feel comfortable foreclosing on your brother if they don't pay your IRA back? So you want to make sure you keep family and business separate, especially when it comes to your IRA investments. Okay? So let's look at some real deals now. Okay. So first, what do the steps look like when you want to take your IRA that's at Fidelity and you want to start investing it into notes? Okay. The first thing is you just have to open a self-directed IRA with a company like Directed IRA that'll allow you to do notes out of your IRA. Takes 5 minutes to fill an application online. I can tell you guys how to do it at the end here, but all you got to do is set up an account, whether that's a traditional self-directed IRA, a Roth self-directed IRA. And then once you get that account set up, you work with our transactions team and you get that account funded by transferring some money over or rolling some money over from an old employer plan or an existing rollover IRA. You don't have to move all your money over, just enough to fund whatever note that you're looking to fund, okay, or whatever investment that you're looking to buy. Once you've got the account open and funded, this is where the self-directed comes. You want to make sure that you are finding good investments or good people to do business with. Okay. You want to make sure that you have the necessary tools to draw up your note agreements. And all that we're asking you to show us is that on the promissory note that you draft based on the terms that you negotiate, that we see your IRA listed as the lender. Okay. Your IRA listed as the lender would read like so at Directed IRA. It would read Directed Trust Company, that's us, FBO stands for the benefit of, and would follow with your name and account number at the end. If you're using an IRA owned LLC, then it's different. Your IRA owned LLC name would be the lender on the note. I know we have a lot of clients that use IRA owned LLCs. Those are fine. Those are great, but make sure that you understand who's actually going to be the lender on the note. If you're using an LLC, it's the LLC that's going to be the lender. If you're not using an LLC, it's going to be your IRA as the lender. So let's talk about one that I did, partnering IRAs on just a simple interest note. So this was a deal that I actually got through a local real estate investor association. I had a gentleman that I knew for, a couple years, came up to me and said, "Hey, Nate, I've got a pretty good deal, but I need money like yesterday." Long story short, he found a property in a pretty rough area of town. He did some skip tracing to find the original owner. It was a property that had been abandoned for well over 2 years. The grass was growing taller than the house. You barely see the house when he first looked at it. And when he first got the appraisal, he got an appraisal on it. He was basically trying to shop it around to some of his different banks. And most of his banks and lending partners didn't want to touch it just because of the condition of the property. But it was a good deal. He found that it was an inherited property. The person that owned it was like a niece or nephew that owned it that never even saw the property. They knew they had it, but they didn't really think it was worth much. So he negotiated some terms and was able to negotiate with that owner that he can buy it for, it was either $25,000 or $30,000, and the rehab was going to be about $25,000 to $30,000. So he needed about $55,000 from what I remember. But the ARV on the property was like 125. So this is what he told me. So the first thing as a lender, I'm thinking $125,000 it's worth, but you only need 55. That's a pretty safe deal for me. I can sleep at night. And even if I have to take that property back and do the rehab, there's enough skin there in equity that I'll still make out as the lender if I have to take that property back. So basically what we did is we just went to negotiating terms. But first I ran it by one of my investor friends and had them run comps. And the funny thing is they came back with a higher ARV than he did. So I knew he was being a little bit conservative, which I liked. So we went ahead and started negotiating terms. Okay. So what happens from there on is we have an attorney draft a promissory note that has our terms. Okay. I also work with my directed IRA custodian, my IRA custodian, to fill out what's called their direction of investment form or their note purchase authorization. Different custodians will have different names, but it's just me giving the authority for my self-directed IRA custodian to make a loan to this individual. And then I also need to accompany that form with a copy of the contract. In this case, the contract is the note, so it makes it really easy. I just need to give them a copy of the note. Okay. The note with the lenders on the note read as such. Okay. I used my Roth and my HSA both on the note. Okay. So my first lender was Directed Trust Company, FBO Nate Hare, as to the undivided interest of 75%. Okay. 75% is just how much my Roth put in compared to the total loan amount. And then Directed Trust Company, FBO Nate Hare, HSA, as the undivided interest of 25%. Okay. Why did I do this? Well, every time a borrower makes my payments back to directed IRA, I got 75% of that check going to my Roth and I got 25% going to my HSA. What's the difference? I can use that HSA funds right away to buy glasses or to pay for doctor's visits or to pay for things outside, anything that's a out-of-pocket medical expense that my insurance doesn't cover. Okay. Now, there are some qualifying criteria to have an HSA. We'll talk about that at a different time, but this is basically how you want to think about self-directed accounts is how many accounts can I qualify for that I can use that I can not only save for retirement, but I can use for tomorrow. Here's the initial loan terms. Okay. So it was a $75,000 loan. Okay. A $25,000 rehab. Okay. Simple interest. We did a simple interest loan. Simple interest meaning it was just an interest only payment. I'm not worried about principal payments with a 1-year note. And it was a 1-year note with a balloon, which basically means we're going to make the payments as if the loan was for 30 years, but the loan has to be paid off in 1 year. Now, why would an investor agree to that? He just needs the money to buy the property. He's going to refinance or sell this property after a year, but he can't get conventional financing to buy it. Okay. And we negotiated that it would be a 12% interest rate with 2 points up front. Points are just upfront interest. So in 1 year, my Roth and my HSA were scheduled to make 14% return. Okay. Is 14% return good? Yeah, it's great. Okay. What happens if the borrower doesn't pay me? Then I foreclose. Big deal. Okay. We also put an optional extension in there. I usually put optional extensions in my loans because if the borrower wants to keep the property longer than a year, I'll allow him to do that, but he's got to pay a fee. Usually it's 1 point to extend the loan, for another year. But what happened is he rehabbed this property went as expected. And then all he did was he decided he wanted to keep it as a rental and he refinanced it with a conventional lender and he just paid me off and I got all my principal back, plus the interest payments over that 12-month period, which allows me to reinvest that money into his next deal or somebody else's next deal. And I get to compound my interest. Okay. So this is a great way for me to make money with my IRAs and my HSAs without touching the property. Okay. Key points to remember: can't loan money to yourself or a disqualified person. You and your borrower are free to set your own loan terms. And IRAs can loan money secured or unsecured if you're crazy. Unsecured just means there's no collateral. Okay. How do I get my money back? Well, I'm going to have to take someone to the court if they don't pay me back. But I've seen other loans secured by a tractor. I've seen loans secured by some medical equipment. Again, I'm not going that route. I like to loan my money secured by real estate. What's it look like if I keep this going for, say, 20 years and I have the ability to compound my interest at 14% without putting an additional dime of contributions in there? Well, if I did this for another 20 years at that same interest rate with $100,000, I'd have an IRA valued at about $1.3 million without putting any more money in it. Is that a pretty good way to retire? Sure it is. Can I sleep at night knowing my money's safe and secured by real estate? Of course it is. The only difference, it's hard. In reality, it's hard to keep compounding interest at 14% when you've got $1 million. That's the only difficult part of that. But it's the concept that I'm trying to get across to you guys, that by structuring your notes in a certain way, and the way that I do it, I like to do short-term notes because it fits everybody's needs. It's a win-win scenario. I can compound my interest and I can exponentially grow my IRA through notes, passive, and I don't have to deal with toilets or tenants. Okay. As a lender or a borrower, you want to understand the different ways that you can create win-win scenarios. This was just an example of a simple interest loan. I have a lot of clients that will do joint ventures. Joint ventures are a little bit different. Okay. Joint venture is not a lender-borrower scenario. It's actually a joint venture where you have two owners. Most of the time when an IRA is in a joint venture, the IRA is the capital partner of that venture. And then you have a sweat equity partner, which could be the real estate investor. There's a lot of pros and cons to doing joint ventures versus loans. Well, I'll just keep that at that. But a joint venture is another way that you can utilize your IRA capital to invest in real estate and do it in a somewhat of a passive manner. You can do a convertible note. Convertible notes are more for businesses, but convertible notes are, I'm going to loan, I've seen actually a real successful convertible note on a loan to a medical device company, a startup company. And what the IRA owner wanted to do is they wanted to be a part of that company as a stockholder. So what they did is they made a loan to the company on a promissory note, but that loan amount was convertible if they chose, converted to stock in the company. Okay. So that would be a convertible note. Another great investment opportunity if you want to structure it that way. Real estate options is another way that you can, deploy money, not own real estate, but make some money in real estate, is through real estate options. I'll do a separate class on that. But what I want to talk about real briefly is a shared equity loan, because a shared equity loan, similar to a simple interest loan, it's a borrower-lender agreement, but shared equity is a great learning tool, especially for borrowers if you're looking to offer more ways to participate for a potential lender. So let's talk about a shared appreciation or shared equity loan real quick. So here's an example of a client that had a financial friend that needed $50,000 to buy a mobile home, okay, double-wide mobile home on 2 acres of land in Texas, okay? So the property was in a nice area, okay? Nice area meaning it was way out in the sticks. It was by a pond. It was outside of Fort Worth. But the way that population was growing is the investor or the borrower, or the real estate investor, knew that this area was going to be hot in like 5 years. So it was a long-term play. They were just buying it for the land that the mobile home sat on. They weren't buying it for the structure. They were buying it for the land. Now, anybody who's a real estate investor knows how difficult impossible it is to get loans on mobile homes. Nobody wants to loan on mobile homes, especially a conventional bank. So you got to get creative and got to get to either a private lender. So what happened on this one is the borrower and the lender used to do deals together, and normally the lender would charge 12%, 10 to 12%. On this specific deal, 12% was going to put the borrower in the red. Why? This wasn't a rental property. This wasn't a property that he could rent, throughout the entire year based on where it was located. So if he had to borrow private money at 12% and try to hold it for 5 years, the borrower would have been coming out of pocket every single month to make that payment. Okay. The rents during the year wouldn't cover the payments. So here's where they backed up and they created a win-win scenario. They said, well, let's not pass on this deal, because they almost did. They said, let's just restructure it and figure out a way that we can both make money on this and make a win-win scenario. So the lender said, well, what do you think you can get in rents throughout the year? Okay. I think I can get this much. Okay, well, let's back that into an interest rate. Okay, I can get this much through the year. How much interest rate could I charge where you break even? They backed in to 6%. It wasn't just come up with out of thin air. It was backed into based on what he thought he can generate in income through the year. So again, this is creating a win-win scenario between two financial friends. Okay, he said, I can pay 6%. Okay, well, in exchange for me dropping my interest from 12 to 6, let's put in a clause where when you sell this property, we split the profit 50-50 down the middle. Said, okay. Some people might be thinking, well, why would somebody give up 50% of their equity on this deal? Because there was no deal before this. He couldn't get the financing to do this deal with anybody else. But if you look at this from the borrower's perspective, okay, how much money does he put into buying this property? $0. Okay. He used all the IRA private lenders' money to buy this property. So $0 came out of the borrower's pocket. How much money did he have to pay in rents over the next, and they held it for 7 years, okay, and he had enough rents to cover the loan payments. How much money did he have to pay for 7 years? $0, because the rents covered the mortgage. When they sold the property 7 years later, they sold it for $130,000, which means there was roughly about $80,000 of equity to split. So each party got $40,000 at closing. Okay. How did the borrower do in that scenario? He came in with no money at the closing table. He paid no money over 7 years. He used all IRA funds. And when they sold it, he walked away with $40,000. If every deal worked like that, how many deals would you do as a borrower? You do every single deal that way. It's like walking up to an ATM and just pulling out 40 grand every single time. Now, do you want to do that on every single deal? No, but sometimes some deals make more sense doing it this way so you can move on and get other deals under your belt. So this isn't an investment that you do on every single deal, but this might be a creative way for you to make a win-win scenario. And by the way, how did the IRA client's Roth IRA do? He made 6% over 7 years. He got all of his principal back after the 7th year, plus a big principal payout or a big equity split of $40,000. How'd the Roth IRA do completely tax-free? I think he did pretty darn well. So that would be the example of a shared equity loan. As a borrower, you are more powerful when you can come to the table with a potential lender and say, we can do it this way, or this way. What's more reliable? What do you feel like you want to do in this situation? You'll find that too when you deal with different IRA owners, because when you deal with IRA lenders, you got to realize one of the things is you got to gauge their risk tolerance. As a borrower, gauging the lender's risk tolerance is something that's very important because every single lender is different. An IRA owner in their 30s thinks differently than an IRA owner in their 70s. So do you think many 70-year-olds with an IRA want to do a shared equity loan? Probably not. They're not looking for home runs, and they're not looking to be that creative. They just want you to tell them how their money's safe and secure, and they just want the comfort of seeing that money come in on a monthly basis. If you're dealing with someone like me or somebody in their 30s that wants to be a little bit more creative and they like to take a little bit more risk, then yeah, let's do something creative and let's do a shared equity loan. Because what's my risk if I have a piece of the equity? What if there's no equity? Well, there's my risk. My risk is I didn't make any equity because the deal was bad. But you're going to want to take less of those chances in retirement than you will in your younger years. So what are some other things to consider from the borrower's perspective? A, protect your lender's interest at all costs, even if it means you lose money on the deal. Your access to money is everything. Okay. As soon as you burn or as soon as you have a deal go bad, if your lender has to feel the result of that, well, you got rest assured they're not going to lend you any more money. And if it's part of a RIA, there's probably nobody that's going to lend you money within that scenario. But I've seen deals go bad all the time. Make sure your lenders are whole so that you have access to money when your next deal comes up. Every real estate investor knows they have a deal go sideways from here or there. That's just life. But make sure that you take care of your lenders so that they will continue to lend to you when you have better deals in the future. As I mentioned, measure your lender's risk tolerance when it comes to their need for money or their wants and needs. Age and lifestyle are going to be different depending on each different person that you talk to when it comes to their retirement accounts. Understanding the different uses of money will get you more access to capital. So understanding that you can self-direct traditional IRAs, Roth IRAs, 401ks, and HSAs will enable you to unlock doors you probably didn't realize were there to realize private capital. By the way, there's $35 trillion in retirement accounts today. That is a big bucket of money that you can tap into by just understanding how to tap into this through self-directed IRAs. And one of the best ways to tap into this as a borrower is make the process smooth and painless on your lenders. The best way to make it smooth and painless on your lenders is to have a self-directed IRA of your own. Real estate investors, the best ones that I see are ones that also have self-directed IRAs that they self-direct, whether they buy property or own rentals or they loan to other real estate investors. They understand how to talk about the process smoothly and painlessly because they already self-direct their own IRAs. When you're unlocking buckets of money through other people that don't know what a self-directed IRA is, you want to make sure that you're talking from experience. Make sure you can talk the talk and walk the walk. And the easiest way to do that is to have a self-directed IRA of your own. So that's just some considerations as the borrower. But understanding how to use OPI is a great way to unlock more money, both as the lender and as the borrower. But it also allows you as a lender, which I really like, is to invest in tangible assets that are right in your community. Okay? I invest in assets that are in my community. I can point out properties that I've helped fund, that they look nice now, that have nice families that live in there, whether the borrower or the investor sold it to them or is renting to them. I don't invest in nameless and faceless mutual funds that don't mean much to me. So I like the ability to be a lender with my IRA so I can invest in my community. That's just me on my soapbox, take it for what it's worth. But I find that when you start investing like that, you start to find that investing with your retirement account becomes a little bit more fun than just investing on your brokerage account, I would say. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. I know I try to cover a lot in a little bit amount of time, and I went a couple minutes over, but I want to give you guys some access to some more information, and I'll take a couple questions here at the end. I want to make sure that you guys have my contact information. If you have questions, I'm going to take some questions here too. If you want to book a call with me, you can always scan that QR code, but you can always shoot me an email. Let's see. Nathan Turner. Hey, what's going on, Nathan Turner? Good to have you, man. Thanks for the compliments. Looks like we've got a lot of questions that were answered by Matthew. Thank you, Matthew. Looks like you guys enjoyed it, so I appreciate that. Nathan, we got to talk, man. I got to have you on one of these things. So again, if you guys have questions, you can always reach out to me directly. I want to make sure that I spend a little time talking about this too. If you guys are interested in learning more about self-directed IRAs, there's no better place to do that than by attending one of our self-directed IRA summits. Right now, we are just marketing for our next summit, which is going to be in Raleigh, North Carolina in October. We have early bird discount tickets for the next 4 days. Only 4 days, guys. There's discounted prices right now if you go to the website. You can either go to sdirasummit.com. Sorry, the page cut off here. Or you can scan that QR code. So it's sdirasummit.com or scan that QR code. And if you use that coupon code Nate50, you get an additional $50 off. Now, this is only for general admission tickets. VIP is almost sold out. So GA tickets are still available, but if you want to take a trip out to sunny North Carolina and hang out with us and listen to Matt and Mark speak about self-directed IRAs and network with about 200 other investors, this is going to be the best opportunity we have for you guys coming down the line. So if you're a lender or you're a borrower, or you just want to learn more about self-directed IRAs, make sure you scoop up tickets before they're gone. We have limited space only, and use that coupon code NATE50. Right now, you can get $100 off GA tickets if you use that in combination with the early bird pricing. So I appreciate your guys' time. Again, shoot me an email if you guys have questions. If I missed any questions, I apologize. Shoot those to me on an email and we'll talk directly. And let us know if this is helping you guys become better self-directed IRA investors. I hope it is. And hopefully you guys find that self-direction is right for you guys. So thanks, guys. Have a good rest of your Wednesday.